This is TWiT.
So, and we've talked about Maker's Mark before, and it's been one of my favorite whiskeys for a long time, mostly because when I was one of the tours I did, I think it was back in 2013, where I just came out of it liking the product even more. Yeah. Now, Mark is not one of the legendary whiskeys.
No, but you know what?
It hasn't been around for forever.
Everywhere, and it's just a high quality thing.
It's a nice quality bar whiskey, right? At a reasonable price. T. Williams Bill Samuels Sr. started it in 1958. Well, he's a little earlier than that. He bought the Burke's Distillery in Laredo, Kentucky. Took a few years to get up and running. And from day one, he did this hand-dipped red wax.
That's the thing that's cool about it, right? The red wax top.
Is the wax top. And so they only started in 1958. It was an older distillery that they refurbished and so forth. And it went through the normal owner. You know, the 70s was a tough time for whiskey. And so they were sold to Hiram Walker and Sons in 81. And then that gets rolled up into Allied Dominic. That becomes Pernod Ricard. And then there's some conflict. So they decide they're going to spin off the brand, Maker's Mark. They sell it to Fortune Brands. Which then got broken up into some antitrust stuff in 2011. And so finally they make a new company called Beam Incorporated after Jim Beam. So it's owned by the same group that owned Jim Beam, now owns Maker's Mark. It's just these iterations. And that was right around the time that the third generation that Rob Samuels took over. So it was his grandfather that started it. Then his father had run it through those difficult times. And then as it got turned into part of Beam Inc., it was very Kentucky centric. Rob was running it. And then in 2014, they merged with Suntory to become Beam Suntory, which is the current structure that it's in right now.
Which sounds like it would be bad.
And there's an interesting conversation there about the effects of having a larger company. Right? Because for a long time, Mark made exactly one product, Mark. Right? In 2010, they made Maker's 46. Maker's 46 is Mark, except that they finish it with French staves. So you can't call it bourbon if you put it in anything other than American oak, right?
Right.
So what they figured out is you take a few French staves and you hang them on a food safe to
please.
Inside the barrel. You get this little different flavor.
This is meeting the letter of the law,
letter of not the spirit. Yeah.
And again, I did a tour back in 2013. They have two lines, so two sets of stills. They use a high column still for the initial distillation and a pot still for finishing. I've tasted the raw product in both scenarios. I've tasted the wort. They have a wooden rick house that has a rotator on it. So the barrels sit in racks, and the bottom at regular intervals every year or so, they take the bottom barrels and move them up to the top to sort of even the aging. And the big thing they talked about is that whiskey and aged in that part of the world in the wooden building like that it's ready when it's ready, but it's ready somewhere between 5 and 6 years. Yeah. And one of the things they would demonstrate for us is they give us a taste of an over oaked or an over aged version of their bourbon.
I love this term. Is this possible?
Yeah. Well, and part of this I think is people's tastes have changed. Yeah. But this was very much their position. And remember, I did this in 2013, just before the Beam Suntory merger, right? Mm-hmm. And so, I really like what you guys are doing. Yes, they still hand dip all the bottles. You could hand dip your own bottle if you like. They'll do a custom label for you. And I have a bottle. It says for Richard Campbell. It's a hand dip bottle. It's awesome. It's great. And this year, we suddenly hear about this cellar aged version. Okay, but let's back up. Yeah. So last time we saw each other in person was the cruise. Yep. Right. And now here we are hanging out. We're back in Seattle. We're back at a conference. It's kind of the old times. And so right away we're like, we should go to Daniel's. Like, yeah, you're right. Yeah. We should go to Daniel's. So
you're not an effective block or bad behavior.
No. Let's be clear. I'm a facilitator.
Blocker.
Talked a little bit about.
He's like, let's do something more responsible than that. No,
where I went. Like, you know what if we go, the nice thing about go to Daniel's, we didn't even have to go outside, but we started in the bar.
Oh, you were right on it.
Out front, the Rick House bar is right out front of, and it is literally the shared bar with the Daniel's bar. Yep. Now, look, I'm a professional alcoholic, so I do study what's on the shelf, because it tells me about the bar pretty quickly. So I noticed they put Scotch on one tier, they put bourbon on another tier, and their Scotch collection's okay. Right. There's a few Macallans. There were no Dalmores up there. There was a Glenmorangie. I'm like, that's okay. The whiskey collection, the bourbon collection was exceptional. Yeah. And it's things I look for. So it's like they clearly had the food and beverage manager clearly has a relationship with the Sazerac distillery, because there was Blanton's and Eagle Rare and Bullet all
bullet rye and bourbon.
Right. And then they had a bunch of rye, and they had the mixer special rye. Like those are difficult whiskeys to get. So I'm like, okay, this whiskey collection is serious, and we're going to go have dinner.
Yep.
And I figure we're going to finish with whiskey. So
2 Manhattans first, and then
a couple Manhattans. Crisis with a credit card. They lost his credit card. They dropped it down behind
the lose it. You could see it. It was just 20 feet down in a pit.
Couldn't get to it. And so then we go in for dinner, and right away to the guy who's seating us, it's like, I'll be getting into your whiskey collection later. And he's like, oh, I'm here to help. No problem.
Right.
And then we sit down and like look at the wine list. And the wine list is thin. And right away I'm thinking, oh, we're having steaks.
It was thin in certain areas.
Yeah. We're having steaks. You want a big fat wine. And I was like, okay, well, let's go Italian.
Yep.
Let's get an Amarone. There's no Amarones on the menu.
There were no Montepulcianos.
But there were 3 Barolos.
I know. Very strange.
And so now the sommelier comes. So I'm harassing him about the wine.
Looked like kind of a Bob Boss, didn't
it? It had that Bob Boss vibe. But, he's got a shtick. He was working the shtick. But we were being checked out.
Sure.
Right? And that's when, now he steered us over to a Carbonera in Chile. And part of me is like,
I know.
I've told him what wine I wanted.
And it's just,
He's now finding me a comparably priced wine that he wants me to try.
I've had experience, like my wife and I tried Chenin Blanc for the first time based on the recommendation of a guy we know from a restaurant in Washington, D.C. And now we actually seek out this wine.
Yeah.
So,
and generally speaking, if the sommelier's got some gauge on you and he suggests the wine, you should try it.
Yeah.
He's not going to steer you wrong. And if he did, it's his fault.
Do you ever feel like a whale in Las Vegas? Like they see you coming through the door and they're like, all right, let's get someone on these guys.
Well, and there's certain bars I go to enough that I'm in Vegas. Those guys know me and they know that I want the back shelf stuff.
Yeah.
And so the real question is, I asked him, is there back shelf wine? Like, what aren't you telling me? And he goes, no, there's back shelf whiskey.
Yep. And
so then I started naming a few and we went to Pappy, of course. He goes, yes, I have 12, 13, and 15. Right. And I'm like, okay.
Yep.
And I knew it was going to be pricey. I think he wanted 150 a shot.
Yep.
For the 15.
So we save money, technically.
Yeah. Well, and this is the thing is I know that bottle's $50.
Yeah.
Right. But you can't get one. Anyway, now we go into the weirder whiskeys and he pulled the Willet Purple Top, which we'll talk about next week.
Mm-hmm.
And this Mark Cellar Aged.
Right.
Now, this is a blend of 11 and 12-year-old Maker's Mark. But wait, I did a tour 10 years ago where they told me, oh, no, after 6 years, it's overaged. So what's going on? What's happened is that they aren't using the rickhouse. They're still doing 4 or 5 years in the rickhouse. And then they're moving the barrels into literal a limestone cellar.
Yeah.
And so now it sits in a limestone cellar for this extended period. And it's interesting that they're using 11s and 12s.
So the rickhouse is warm.
Because it's wood.
Yeah. Right. And this place is obviously cool.
What it is steady, right? It's probably 68 degrees Fahrenheit in there, steady the whole time. And so it's more tolerant to time on wood. You're not getting as much breathing. You're not getting as much loss.
I would just say that what happened there was pretty close to perfection.
It's a very, very nice whiskey.
It was really good. And it's cask strength. I didn't notice.
And it's bottle of cask strength, which seems to be around 57%.
Yeah. It was a bit expensive.
It was a little pricey because you can't find it.
Yeah.
But Richard was paying, so why not?
Not exactly.
It was only released on the market earlier this year, and it initially was priced at $150 a bottle.
Yeah.
And I found a couple of liquor stores with the listing still, but they have none.
Right.
I can only find a bottle. If you said, go get a bottle right now, there are specialty whiskey shops that have it. Say they have it for sale.
Yeah.
$600.
Yeah. That was the number. I can't believe I remember anything from that night, but yeah, that's what I thought it was, $600.
Yeah. So that is the story of Maker's Mark Cellar Aged.
It's possible I fell asleep Richard's room later that night, but the point is, I hadn't seen him in a while.
Yeah, there was a few cocktails and a bottle of wine. But
there was some great pictures too of you from Charlotte restaurant later that I really enjoyed. There's Donna Sakar and Scott Hanselman. Looked like you guys had fun. So you're having a good time.
Yeah.
Donna's always around.
I notably did not drink a lot that night, actually. That was the next night.
That was the next night. That's what I figured.
I always mature on day 2.
And this is day 3.
Yeah. Everything's good. Everything's good.
What fun. Maker's Mark, Cellar Aged, 2023.
Yeah, still no age declaration on it, but it
says on the site though 11 and 12, right? So
if this was list price, you'd be stupid not to buy it.
Go buy it. If you find a $150 bottle, grab it.
I
should be suspicious.
Really, it's that good.
It really was good.
It's an excellent bourbon. Right. As good as anything.
Do you think Bevmo would have it if I run over?
No. I checked. Yeah. You can go online and find a specialty shop. They'll sell it to you for $600.
Wow.
But it's $600 is too much. I know, it's ridiculous.
And I've seen on TikTok, I think they actually dip it in wax. Like they take the bottle and they dip it in wax.
All those bottles, every one of those bottles is handmade.
So it's all unique, which is kind of cool. I really like that.
It's also Beam. There's a big story about Beam Suntory pushed them to make this.
Right.
Oh, really? They didn't want to, huh?
They never wanted to make it. So actually, this is an example of the big company having a positive impact on this little local.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. What did I do? I chopped you guys in half. I'm doing something strange. Let's go back.
Right.
Push the wrong button. Richard's dying, and all of a sudden, boom, you're in the split. Well, I'm just trying to get Paul on the left and you and Richard on the right, but it just won't work. So we just have to. There's a few OCD people in our audience who are just dying right about now.
We should have been sitting in the other seats, I think. We upset everybody.
I think that's part of the appeal of the travel.
Yeah.
Things are going to
never know what's going to happen.
Yep.